All right, so today we start out by talking about the lockdown has been extended, at least the measures that were put in place a month ago. And this was put out, I think it was a couple days ago, but I wanted to talk about it nonetheless. And that again, this is the most important thing going on right now, at least in Canada, in these lockdowns. And like I said, I've been going over this stuff for a long time now, very long time. I don't even want to think about how long it's been. But this is just more of the same. I know this has been the theme for like the last 6 to 8 months on this stuff. I really know that, and for a lot of people, it's probably tiring. But again, like I've been pointing out for the longest time, until more people start speaking up, until more people start getting up in arms about this stuff, it's not going to change, right? It's not going to change. Now, again, the lockdown was set to expire. Was it on the 7th, the 8th? I don't know what the exact date was, but nonetheless, they extended it about 2 weeks to the 21st. And why did they do that? Well, the thing I heard is they got to wait for the numbers to come in from Christmas. Well, yesterday I mean, 2 weeks ago, yesterday was Christmas. So again, why do you have to wait? Not to mention too, technically people weren't supposed to be getting together for Christmas. So saying we have to wait for the numbers to come back from Christmas is admitting that the restrictions don't work because you're saying that no one was following or hardly anyone was following them. Like again, like the stupidity of these people, it really knows no bounds. And this is the thing too, like I don't know who are the people that are advising these people to. Now again, I know that a lot of these people are getting their marching orders from the higher ups. And again, for anyone that's paying attention in this scenario, you know who that is. Because again, if I mention them, I'm at risk of getting banned from YouTube at least. But nonetheless, again, I think people know who the higher ups are. But again, like as like Jason Kenney and these premiers and MLAs, like they have to have advisors, right? They I'm sure they premiers may have teams of advisors. Like, what possible motive can these people have? Because again, as far as the lockdown zealots go, that let's stay at home for the next decade in this veiled guise of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, they're not pleasing anyone. Like, they're not pleasing anyone by doing what they're doing. They're not pleasing anyone. Like, I don't think I've literally talked to anyone over the last 6 months in person, because online you will see a handful, but again, those are usually people that aren't affected by this. I've never talked to anyone who says, "Yeah, I agree with the restrictions 100%." I've never talked to one person that has said that. Not one. And I've talked to people that interact with quite a few people for their job, and they say it's even exceedingly rare. So again, I really don't know what these people's motives are. I really don't. I think the motive, the most likely scenario, as far as their motive goes, is just power. It's a power thing. It has to be a power thing because there's no data that backs up what they're doing. There's no data at all. It's been like that for 8 months. So again, like you have to look at it from a logical, a Occam's razor. What's the most likely solution, or what's the most likely scenario here? It's not they're worried about saving lives. It's not that they're worried about the hospitals being overwhelmed, because the hospitals have never been overwhelmed, at least up until this point. So again, what is it? Like, what is it? It's got to be something else that's going on. Now, I think another thing that's going on is that they know that the average person's too ignorant to question things, right? They know the average person's too ignorant to question things, or even if they disagree with these lockdowns and stuff, they know that the average person, they've been dumbed down enough by public schools and by the mainstream media that any attempt to go after them, or to question the narrative, it's not going to go anywhere, right? It's not going to go anywhere. So the take home point here, I think, like I've been saying all along, is that they're just going to keep moving the goalposts. Like, this is the thing that bothers me a lot about this situation. Now, I know it is kind of satirical, but I wish that you were able to bet on this stuff. Like, I wish you were able to bet on this stuff, because I would have made a fortune. I think you're going to be able to make a fortune. You would be able to make a fortune going forward, because again, it would be very simple. They announced the 28-day lockdown right in December, And if you'd have simply bet the over on the amount of time we actually end up in lockdown, you'd have made a fortune. If you bet the over in Ontario, you'd have made a fortune. Right? Again, like the solution to for these people has always been double down. Like, can we think of a major politician in Canada who has admitted in any way, shape, or form that the lockdowns don't work? The only time that has happened is when Jason Kenney admitted they were wrong about closing small businesses, but yet they turn around and implement incredibly tough restrictions that are putting small businesses out of business. Like it's we live in an absolutely insane world, right now. Like absolutely insane. And the thing that shocks me the most when I talk to some people, because I think there's a lot of people that are woke up to some degree, but the majority of people, it really boggles my mind how they can have these everyday conversations with like I say, getting together with people over Christmas. Like most people, they just pretend like everything's all hunky dory, right? Everything's all hunky dory, even though, you know, unemployment's through the roof. Um, People's livelihoods have been destroyed. Like I don't understand how people can just pretend like everything's all right when it really isn't. I really don't understand how people can do that. Now I think the reality behind why they do that is that for a lot of them, they're still fine, right? They're still fine. They're a teacher, or they work in the healthcare field or something like that, so they're perfectly fine. Or there are people that are so programmed and brainwashed that they're supporting their own demise. And that is the majority of people here. Like that is the majority of people here. The majority of people do not support these restrictions and lockdowns, at least to the extent that they're at. But the majority of people have not they're not speaking up at all when it comes to these restrictions, like not at all. So in other words, they are supporting their own demise. It's very, very sad that that's the point we're at in society, where so many people have been convinced to support their own demise. So many people have been convinced to support their own demise. It's really, really astounding. Um, so anyway, as far as my prediction on this stuff, again, I thought that given that they reopened schools, that would hint that they were going to reopen the other things that they closed down, which they're not going to go back to normal anytime soon. But I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, because again, I think that something they're probably going to say is, oh, we got to wait for the numbers to come out from the schools. They're going to give it another 2 weeks, and then they'll probably come out with another excuse. I don't know what that'll be. Maybe they'll say, yeah, businesses can reopen, but at an even lower capacity than they were before, which is going to cripple them even more. Like it's just another gut punch. So I almost guarantee they'll do one of those two things. I almost guarantee they'll do one of those two things. It'll be either we got to wait another week or two because we got to wait for the numbers to come in from the schools, even though the schools will have been open for, I guess, like 10 days. Um, but again, the numbers coming out of schools are already clear. Like it's not, there's a lot of cases coming from school, but there's not a lot of spread coming from schools, and that the vast majority of the cases are asymptomatic and or false positives, right? And we know that asymptomatic case, I mean, obviously false positives you're not going to spread, but asymptomatic cases, that the likelihood of spread is incredibly rare. So again, you bring it up to these idiots that, oh, I mean, you do know that the chances of dying are less than the flu for these people, which they'll usually acknowledge. But then their argument is always, oh, they're going to spread it to grandma and grandpa, and they're going to die. But again, like there's multiple studies that have came out recently showing asymptomatic spread is either literally non-existent or incredibly rare. Either way, it's not something we should be worried about. Schools should have never closed. They should have never closed. And for the people that have serious underlying conditions, like the 1 in 1,000, yeah, come up with something to where that they don't get left behind, right? But society should not be completely destroyed to cater to an incredibly small amount of people. We don't accept that for in any other way, shape, or form in society, but we're doing it for this situation, right? 97% of people dying of this are in nursing homes, and of the rest, of that other 3%, like 80% of them have multiple underlying conditions. So, what percentage of the population has multiple underlying conditions and is in a nursing home? I mean, that's a pretty low percentage of people. And a lot of those underlying conditions are lifestyle related. So again, if it's not my fault you refuse to exercise your whole life. It's not my fault you refuse to eat healthy your whole life. That's your fault. And again, speaking of that, from Jordan Rachel saying, if you're going to tell me I'm responsible for your health, I'm going to follow you around the grocery store and make sure you only buy organic fruits and vegetables, that your BMI is in a healthy range, no sodas, and I will remove all items with added sugars from your cart. Again, if we're going to make other people responsible for other people's health, and again, I don't care what the lockdown zealots say, by forcing people to stay home, by forcing people to shut down their businesses, that is what you were doing by default. So if we're going to do that, why don't we do that in other circumstances? Again, they claim to care about saving lives, even though way more people are dying of causes caused by obesity. Way more people are dying by factors from smoking. More people are dying from factors from alcohol. Why aren't we worried about banning or reducing our consumption of those things? Well, I think the reality behind it is that, I mean, I think there's a lot of realities. Number one is that the people that think this stuff are complete ideological zealots. They're, and again, calling them zealots is too respectable to zealots, to be honest. But the people that believe this, they're overwhelmingly leftist, right? They're overwhelmingly on the left. And again, people on the left is, you know, they love forcing other people to pay for their wrongdoing, right? They love forcing other people to be responsible for their bad decisions, but only in certain circumstances, right? So again, that is one of the fundamental attributes of the leftist ideology. So again, that's why they believe stuff like this, but they refuse to acknowledge stuff like this, right? And their entire argument behind this whole stuff is, oh, we got to save lives, right? We got to save lives. But yet again, ironically, they ignore the fact that when you add up, suicides and drug overdoses, that number exceeds the amount of people dying of the virus by orders of magnitude. And that's not even including the amount of missed cancer screenings, the amount of suicides down the road, because again, people lose their job, people grow up in an abusive household, all of those kind of things, right? The amount of people that are going to die because of the lockdown restrictions is going to exceed the amount of people that are going to die of the virus by orders of magnitude. Like, it's not even going to be comparable. Um, but again, the point still stands here, and is very important that if we're going to make other people responsible for other people's health in certain circumstances, then why not in other circumstances? And this isn't even like a comparing a very large thing to a very small thing, right? It would be maybe an argument that you could make is if literally, like, let's say, one thing kills 1,000 people a year, one thing kills one. It would be, you could understand not taking it seriously if you're saying that we should be equally as worried about the one thing as the 1,000 thing, but far more people are dying of these other causes. So if anything, we should be more worried about this stuff. But again, the reality behind the whole virus and lockdown push is that it's an excuse to push for big government. It's an excuse to push for socialism. That is why, and I think that's why a lot of these people support it, even though it doesn't necessarily benefit them directly. They support it because again, it's a push for socialism. It's a push for big government, and a lot of people are going to support that by default, no matter how much pain and suffering it causes. This is from Spencer Fernando, and he says, Notice how politicians never resign anymore, just apologize and hope it blows over. They think they can get away with anything." Now, again, some of them do, but this is one of the many problems with politics these days, and I think the biggest thing is that things are just so polarized. Like, things are just so polarized, and that they know that, especially on the left, and the simple reason being is that when the left does wrongdoing, the mainstream media will defend them. And it'll go down in the history books as being them doing something that was super noble, right? Because the public school teachers they're not gonna talk bad about that. Again, when you talk about communism, is it talked about in an as negative a light as fascism? Well, no, even though communism killed way more people. Again, when people are taught about the stuff Bill Clinton did, or they taught about the Monica Lewinsky part or the Jeffrey Epstein pedo island part or the rape accusation part. Well, they're taught about the Lewinsky stuff, right? The rest of it's a conspiracy theory, even though it's all been documented, right? So again, this is why this kind of stuff happens, and um, I think the other thing too is that these elites and the mainstream media and a lot of these people, it's designed their entire way of going about things. It's designed to polarize people. It's designed to polarize people, and the big problem is that most people don't recognize that. And for the ones that do, a lot of them have this shtick of I'm never going to call a spade, right? It's these people they're getting up on their high horse, their virtue signaling about how violence is never okay. I don't care what you say. Like when it comes to this stuff with the Trump rally, right? But most of these people were people that either didn't even acknowledge the BLM and Antifa rioting that and violence that happened on a far larger scale. Most of them don't even acknowledge it, and the ones that did downplayed it. Most of them downplayed it a lot, or you know didn't even condemn it. Right? Didn't even condemn it. So again, this is the thing I really can't stand about people is that if you recognize polarization, it's still okay to point out yeah, you guys are doing a worse job at this. You guys are doing a worse job at this, right? The the left right now is clearly doing more of a job to polarize than the right. It is not the right that is calling to ban political points of view that differ from theirs. It is not the right that are calling to ban major political figures that disagree with their worldview from social media, right? And this is the thing I can't stand about a lot of these people. A lot of them aren't even overly political, which I guess I kind of understand. But again, if you're going to point out all this polarization, it's really stupid and ignorant of these people to pretend like both sides are equally responsible for it when that's complete BS, right? That's complete BS. So the last thing I wanted to bring up is from Kyle Kashuv, and he points out this 2019 National Teacher of the Year, basically calling for violence against Mitch McConnell and praising the violence that happened to Rand Paul, and again showing his Twitter following. And again, these are the people again. They can literally call for violence on Twitter, but again, because they're on the left, nothing happens to them, right? Nothing happens. And this isn't just some random. This guy's got 12,000 followers, right? So again, this is just the millionth piece of evidence that again, big tech is so biased it's not even funny. And that doesn't mean that the bias is literally always political, but it is usually political, right? It's usually political. Um, so anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links below. Follow me on those other platforms if you haven't already. This is incredibly important right now. YouTube and Twitter are censoring like never before. So again, make sure you get on those other platforms. Again, if you want to donate, you can do that as well. Again, I appreciate whatever support I can get. But like I say, check out those links and stay tuned for more.